The sky of Janjur Qom, the sky above Janjur Qom, was no longer a familiar canvas of soft blues and drifting clouds. It was a fractured mosaic of emerald light, the afterglow of weaponized plasma tearing through atmosphere, and the livid crimson streaks of burning debris. Below, the ancient city of Ratol, once a testament to Shyuum ingenuity, was a charnel house. Spires that had pierced the heavens now lay broken, their crystalline facets shattered, reflecting the inferno in 1,000 distorted mirrors. High above, in the precarious sanctuary of a floating platform, Minister of Whispers Janjur Qom watched the devastation with a chilling detachment. His elaborate robes, usually pristine, were singed at the hem, and dust motes danced in the slivers of light that penetrated the smoke-choked air. "Another city falls," he murmured, his voice raspy, and still the hierarchs cling to their squabbles. Beside him, Kurl, a younger Shyuum with eyes that held a frantic glint, clutched a data slate. "It's worse than you know, Minister. The loyalists in the eastern provinces are routing the reformists. Their zealotry has reached a fever pitch. They speak of cleansing the impure from the holy archives." Zaitan turned, his gaze sharp. "Cleansing? They mean burning, Kurl. Burning knowledge, the very foundation of our civilization." He paced the platform's edge, the wind whipping at his robes. "They believe that by destroying what they deem heretical, they can enforce their singular vision of truth. Fools! Truth is a tapestry, not a single thread." A sudden earth-shattering tremor rocked the platform. Far below, a section of Ratol's protective energy shield flared violently, then winked out, exposing a district to the relentless bombardment. Buildings crumbled like sandcastles. "They're using the ancient seismic disruptors," Kurl gasped, pointing. "The ones thought too dangerous, too unstable." Zaitan's eyes narrowed. "The loyalists are desperate. This suggests their victory is not as assured as they boast." He paused, a strange glint entering his gaze. "And desperation, Kurl, can lead to interesting opportunities." Miles away, within the opulent but now crumbling chambers of the High Council, Hierarch Surul Fadami, his usually serene face contorted in a snarl, slammed his fist on a holographic display of the battlefront. They dare question the divine mandate of the prophets. They question your interpretation of it. "Sural," retorted Hierarch Maki Kovus, his voice calm, despite the tremors shaking the chamber. Makai, a reformist, wore simpler robes, a stark contrast to Sural's gem-encrusted attire. The ancient texts speak of balance, of understanding, not of blind obedience to a single dogma. "Blasphemy!" Sural shrieked. "You poison the minds of our people with your balance. There is only one path, the path to salvation, and it is revealed through the holy oracles." Mohi shook his head sadly. The oracles are interpretations, Surel, not absolute decrees. We are destroying ourselves. Look at the sky. We are tearing our home apart for a war of words. A massive explosion ripped through the eastern wing of the council chambers. Dust and debris rained down. Sural staggered back, his face pale with fear, not anger. Mahi, however, seemed to steel himself. This is the consequence of your unwavering dogma, Sural. The path you have chosen leads to ruin. Just then a frantic aide burst in. Hierarchs, a priority transmission from the Deep Space Observatory. It's unprecedented. Sural, still trembling, waved dismissively. Deal with it. Our immediate concern is the heretics at our gates. Mukai, however, stepped forward. Unprecedented. Put it through. Now. A holographic projection flickered to life. It showed a distant, swirling nebula, but within it, something massive, unnatural, was emerging. It was unlike anything the Shyuum had ever conceived. A colossal vessel, ancient beyond measure, its hull scarred by the passage of eons, yet radiating an almost impossible power. It was dark, monolithic, with subtle, ethereal blue lights tracing its colossal form. My ancestors, the aide stammered. It appears to be a construct of the Forerunners, a warship, a dreadnought pod. A stunned silence descended upon the chamber, broken only by the distant sounds of war. Sural, for the first time, seemed truly humbled. His eyes, fixed on the projection, widened with a mixture of terror and awe. Mukai, too, stared, but his expression was one of profound wonder. Back on the floating platform, Janjur Qom's data slate pinged insistently. Curl looked over his shoulder. Minister, it's a deep space anomaly alert. Categorization, unidentified colossal Forerunner artifact. Origin, the Villa supercluster. Trajectory, Janjur Qom. Zaitan snatched the slate, his eyes scanned the data, his breathing quickening. Forerunner, dreadnought. The words were barely a whisper, imbued with a reverence that even the war could not entirely extinguish. He zoomed in on the projection, the ethereal blue lights of the colossal vessel filling the display. This changes everything. He turned to Curl, his face alight with a dangerous, brilliant intensity. Forget the Civil War. Forget the hierarchs and their pathetic squabbles. This is the truth. This is the path. This is our salvation or our annihilation. Within hours, the news of the Forerunner dreadnought's appearance had spread like wildfire through the fragmented Shyuum communication networks. The war, which had seemed so all-consuming, suddenly felt trivial. The sky above Janjur Qom, still scarred by conflict, now held a new, ominous promise. Hierarch Sural, in a desperate attempt to reassert his authority, declared the dreadnought a divine sign of the prophet's displeasure, a judgment against the reformists. He called for a swift and total victory against Mahi's forces, claiming only through absolute unity under his banner could they appease the Forerunners. Mohi, however, saw it differently. He immediately ceased all offensive actions, ordering his forces to stand down and observe. He sent a priority broadcast across all channels, even those controlled by Sural's loyalists. We have faced each other with blades and fire, blinded by our own interpretations. But now, a truth beyond our understanding descends upon us. The Forerunners, our creators, have returned. We must put aside our petty differences and face this together as one people, or we will perish as fragments. Janjur Qom, having secured a secure, long-range comms link, contacted Mohi directly. Hierarch, your words are wise. Sural still clamors for war, but his voice grows weaker with each passing moment. The loyalist forces are wavering. Many of them, even the most zealous, are now looking to the sky, not to their commanders. The fear of the unknown is a potent unifier, Minister. Mohi replied, his voice tired but resolute, but also a potent divider. Some will see this as a sign to rally behind a strong hand, to find comfort in old certainties. Then we must offer them a new certainty, Zaitan countered, a shared destiny, a common purpose. The dreadnought is not merely a vessel, Hierarch. It is a symbol, a crucible. As the Forerunner dreadnought drew closer, its sheer scale became incomprehensible. It blotted out stars, a silent, dark leviathan, casting a shadow across an entire hemisphere of Janjur Qom. Its presence dwarfed their own warships, making them seem like children's toys. The emerald skies of Janjur Qom had given way to an oppressive, artificial twilight. The final, pivotal moment arrived when the dreadnought made no hostile moves, no destructive displays. Instead, a single, elegant beam of azure light descended from its vast underbelly, touching down precisely on the central spire of Ratol, which had, miraculously, remained standing amidst the ruins. This act, not of war, but of deliberate, precise contact, shattered the remaining resolve of Sural's loyalists. The beam was not a weapon. It was an invitation. Sural, witnessing this from his damaged council chamber, felt his carefully constructed world crumble. His divine mandate, his interpretations, his very authority, all seemed insignificant before the silent, sublime power descending from the heavens. He slumped into his throne, a broken prophet. Mohi Kovus, however, moved with purpose. He broadcast one final unifying message to all Shyuum. The Forerunners have offered us a path, not a path of war against each other, but a path of discovery, a path to understanding. Let us walk it together, not as loyalists or reformists, but as Shyuum, for the sake of our future, for the sake of our very existence. We must unite. Now. He gathered a small, diverse delegation, including Janjur Qom, who had arrived quickly, and even a few of Soral's now disillusioned former commanders. They boarded a small ceremonial shuttle, its polished hull reflecting the alien light of the dreadnought. As the shuttle ascended, leaving the scarred, still smoldering surface of Janjur Qom behind, Zitan looked out at the silent, majestic Leviathan that dominated their sky. "This is it, Hierarch," he said, his voice laced with a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. "The beginning or the end." Mahi nodded, his gaze fixed on the approaching Forerunner vessel. "Perhaps, Minister," he replied, "it is both." The shuttle docked with the colossal dreadnought, swallowed by its vastness, carrying the fate of the Shyuum and perhaps an entire galaxy into the heart of ancient mystery. The Civil War was over, not by victory, but by the overwhelming, unifying presence of an ancient, enigmatic power. The sky of Janjur Qom had changed forever. It was no longer a battleground, but a gateway. The Great Schism erupts. The interior of the Forerunner dreadnought was a symphony of impossible light and sculpted silence. Corridors of polished, iridescent metal stretched into the distance, their surfaces shimmering with an inner luminescence that defied earthly physics. The air, though recycled, tasted clean and sharp, carrying a faint, metallic tang. Janjur Qom, his political instincts honed by a lifetime in the volatile courts of Janjur Qom, found himself awestruck. Beside him, Mohi Kovus, ever the pragmatist, scanned the intricate holographic displays that pulsed to life as they passed, his expression a mixture of profound wonder and cautious apprehension. Surul Vadami, trailing behind them with his retinue of hardline loyalists, seemed less impressed, his gaze darting about with a suspicion that bordered on resentment. A singular ethereal being composed of shimmering light and complex geometric patterns coalesced before them. Its voice, a cascade of harmonious tones, resonated directly within their minds, bypassing the need for translation. "Welcome, Shyuum. We have observed your struggle, your potential, and your self-destruction." Mahi, ever quick to engage, bowed deeply. "We are honored by your presence and humbled by your wisdom. Revered one, our world suffers. Can you offer guidance, the light being pulsed? Our purpose is not to intervene, but to offer knowledge. The path of your species is your own to forge. However, we offer access to a fraction of the Forerunner archives, a glimpse into the galaxy's true history and the perils that await." A vast holographic projection erupted in the central chamber, depicting star charts, ancient civilizations, and terrifying tentacled horrors that consumed entire worlds. The Shyuum watched in stunned silence as the history of the flood, a parasitic organism capable of devouring all sentient life, unfolded before them. The Forerunners, once the galaxy's custodians, had been forced to unleash the Halo array, sacrificing countless lives to preserve the galaxy from this ultimate threat. The revelation struck the delegation with the force of a cosmic hammer blow. The Civil War, the petty squabbles over doctrine and power, suddenly seemed utterly meaningless in the face of such an existential horror. This changes everything," McKay whispered, his voice hoarse with shock. "Our internal strife, our division, it's a luxury we cannot afford." Zayton, always pragmatic, saw the strategic implications immediately. If such a threat exists, then unity is not merely desirable, it is imperative for survival. He turned to Soral, whose face was a mask of disbelief and dawning fear. "Hierarch, this is the truth. Your dogma, your insistence on our unique divinity, it pales before this." Soral, however, clung to his beliefs with the tenacity of a drowning man. "Lies, deceptions. This ancient technology is merely a tool of manipulation, a blasphemy designed to undermine the sacred traditions of the Shyuum. We are the chosen, destined to inherit the stars, not to cower before fabricated threats." His voice, usually a booming pronouncement, was now shrill, laced with panic. This flood, it is a heresy." His loyalist faction, already uneasy with the Forerunner presence, murmured in agreement. Their faith, the bedrock of their power, was under direct assault. "Heresy!" Zayton's voice was a low growl, barely controlled. "Hierarch, you speak of heresy while the very fabric of existence is threatened. This is not about faith. It is about survival." The light being pulsed again. "The choice is yours. Embrace the truth or succumb to ignorance." The chasm between McKay and Zayton's reformist vision and Soral's rigid traditionalism widened into an unbridgeable canyon. The dreadnought Takeover, intended as a beacon of unity, had instead become the catalyst for the greatest schism in Shyuum history. Back on Janjur Qom, the news of the Forerunner revelation ignited a powder keg. McKay and Zayton broadcast the horrifying truth of the flood, using the dreadnought's advanced communication systems to override Soral's sensors. The public, already weary from civil war, reacted with a mixture of terror and outrage. The idea that their leaders had kept such a monumental threat hidden, or worse, dismissed it, fueled the flames of dissent. Soral, seeing his authority crumble, declared McKay and Zayton heretics, accusing them of conspiring with alien powers to overthrow the true faith. He rallied his most fervent loyalists, branding the dreadnought a bot, a demonic construct, and its revelations a test of their unwavering devotion. His rhetoric, once a unifying force, now became a divisive weapon. "They seek to dismantle our sacred order." Soral roared to a throng of his followers, his staff slamming against the polished floor of the high temple. "They would have us abandon the wisdom of our ancestors, bend knee to false gods, and cower before phantoms. We, the Shyuum, are not to be swayed by such trickery. We shall cleanse our homeworld of these blasphemers." The subsequent clash was inevitable and brutal. Soral's loyalists, fueled by fanaticism, launched a desperate assault on the districts controlled by Mahi and Zetan, where the dreadnought's influence was strongest. The civil war, which had paused in bewildered awe, now resumed with a ferocity born of existential dread. Zetan, seeing the futility of further internal conflict, made a difficult decision. We cannot waste lives fighting among ourselves, not with the flood looming. He turned to Maki. The dreadnought offers power, true power. It can defend us, but it can also unify us under a shared purpose. Mahi, his eyes gleaming with a newfound resolve, nodded. To stand against the galaxy's true enemy, we must become something greater than ourselves. We must forge a new path, a new alliance. From the depths of their despair, a new vision began to emerge. The forerunner dreadnought Kiet, once a symbol of alien mystery, now offered not just knowledge, but the means to enforce a new order. Zetan and Mahai, with the support of the dreadnought's silent, powerful presence, began to reach out to other smaller species on the fringes of Shyuum space. Species who had long watched the civil war with nervous trepidation. They spoke of the flood, of the terrifying truth revealed by the forerunners, and of the absolute necessity of a united front. The loyalists, meanwhile, found themselves increasingly isolated. Sural's fervent pronouncements seemed hollow in the face of the dreadnought's undeniable power and the mounting evidence of the flood's existence. Their numbers dwindled, their morale eroded by the sheer scale of the threat. The great schism, ignited by the spark of ancient technology and fueled by the clash of ideologies, had cleaved the Shyuum in two, setting the stage for the birth of something entirely new and profoundly dangerous, a galactic alliance born of fear and an unwavering, if sometimes misguided, determination to survive. The seeds of the covenant had been sown, not in faith alone, but in the terrifying shadow of universal annihilation. Scars of conflict, the crimson sun beat down on Janjur Qom, casting long, fractured shadows across the ravaged landscape. Smoke still plumed from the skeletal remains of what were once grand spires, the air thick with the acrid scent of burnt metal and something far more organic, the lingering stench of death. Maki Kovas stood amidst the ruins, his normally pristine robes singed and torn, a testament to the brutal conflict that had just concluded. Beside him, Janjur Qom, his political acumen now honed by the crucible of war, surveyed the destruction with a grim stoicism. The civil war had been short, but agonizingly fierce, fueled by Sural Vadami's fanatical rejection of the flood and the truth of the forerunner dreadnought. The dreadnought itself, a silent, colossal titan, loomed in the distant sky, a stark reminder of both the horror that had necessitated this war and the power that had ultimately decided it. Its alien geometry, once a marvel, now seemed to possess a haunting quality, a monument to a species that had faced a threat even greater than the one the Shyuum now grappled with. It had been their reluctant weapon, its energy discharges carving swathes of destruction through Sural's forces, silencing his fervent cries of blasphemy with devastating finality. "The cost," Maki murmured, his voice raspy, "is unimaginable." He gestured to a collapsed dome where, only weeks ago, scholars had debated ancient texts. Now, only rubble remained, a burial shroud for the pursuit of knowledge. Zaitan nodded, his gaze sweeping over the survivors, a ragged assembly of bewildered faces. "But the alternative, Muhi, was annihilation. Sural's blindness would have doomed us all." He paused, then continued, "The dreadnought Humnat. It delivered us, but also scarred us. How do we explain this to our people? How do we justify the devastation?" Maki turned, his eyes meeting Zaitan's. "We don't justify it. We bear the burden. We show them the threat, the true horror of the flood, not through abstract warnings, but through the scars on our land, on our souls." He knew it would be a difficult truth to swallow, especially for a people who had long prided themselves on their enlightened path. The revelation of the flood and the subsequent war had fractured their very perception of reality. Their immediate task was clear: gather the remaining leaders, those who had survived Sural's purge and the war itself. The meeting was held in a hastily erected command center, its temporary nature a stark contrast to the grand council chambers of old. The air was thick with tension and suspicion. Many present had lost loved ones, their faces etched with grief and lingering resentment towards those who had wielded the dreadnought. "We stand at the precipice," Maki began, his voice cutting through the hushed murmurs. "The flood is real. It is an ancient terror capable of consuming all life. The forerunner dreadnought, the very instrument that ended this civil war, is our only proof, our only source of insight into this existential threat." A gaunt, elderly Shyuum, whose traditionalist robes were tattered, rose from his seat. "You speak of proof, hierarch. We speak of desecration. You turned an ancient relic, a testament to a divine civilization, into a weapon against your own kind." Zaitan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "And what would you have preferred, Elder? To allow Sural's delusion to lead us to an ignorance that would see us utterly consumed by a parasitic horror? The dreadnought, in its silent wisdom, showed us the path to survival. It forced us to confront a truth that transcended our petty squabbles." The elders scoffed. "A path of blood and ruin, delivered by an unholy artifact." Maki interjected, his voice carrying the weight of his recent experiences. "Unholy. Elder, what is unholy is the complacency that would allow us to be devoured. The dreadnought is not an instrument of divine will, nor is it demonic. It is a vessel of knowledge, a testament to a war fought across galaxies, a war we are now destined to inherit." He projected the images and data, gleaned from the dreadnought's systems, the horrifying biological structures of the flood, the desperate, futile struggles of the forerunners. The images, stark and undeniable, silenced the room. The sheer scale of the threat was palpable, a chilling realization that settled over them like a shroud. As the meeting concluded, a fragile consensus began to form. Fear, raw and visceral, was a powerful motivator. The immediate need for defense, for unity, superseded the lingering resentment. But Maki knew it wouldn't be enough. Their own fractured society, reeling from civil war, was ill-equipped to face a galactic threat. "We need more than ourselves," Maki confided to Zitan later, as they surveyed the desolate cityscape from a high vantage point. "Our civilization, even united, is too small, too weak, too scarred. The Forerunners, with all their power, failed. We need allies." Zitan considered this, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. Other species, primitives, perhaps, but with numbers, with different strengths. "And a shared purpose," Maki added. "A common enemy. The flood will be that enemy. But how do we convince them? How do we build an alliance when our own people are still recovering from internal strife?" The answer, he realized with a pang of dread, lay in the very thing that had brought them to this point. The dreadnought, its power, its mystery, its alien origin. It would be both a beacon and a binding force. It would be the catalyst for a new order, a new religion even, forged from the ashes of their old beliefs and the terrifying truth of the flood. The Forerunner artifact, once a source of division, would become the cornerstone of their unity, not just among themselves, but with other species who would, willingly or unwillingly, be drawn into their new, fear-driven alliance. The path ahead was fraught with moral compromises and difficult choices, but Mohai knew with a chilling certainty that it was the only path to survival. The scars of conflict, though painful, would serve as a grim reminder of the alternative. They would be the foundation upon which the covenant would be built. A hidden path, the scarred hull of the dreadnought, a testament to an ancient, apocalyptic conflict, dominated the orbital sky above Janjur Qom. It was a bruised, silent sentinel, yet within its depths the whisper of its true purpose resonated, a chilling promise of power. Mohi Kovus stood on the newly christened bridge, the air thick with the metallic tang of recycled life support and the faint, unsettling hum of dormant Forerunner systems. Around him, the remnants of the San Shyuum Council, once bitterly divided, now huddled in a fragile truce, their faces etched with a fear that transcended their species' ingrained arrogance. Zitan, Jerome, his massive frame a silhouette against the holographic display of a star chart gestured towards a cluster of uncharted nebulae. The Forerunner archives within this vessel, they speak of something beyond our understanding. Not just the flood, but the means to contain it, to utterly eradicate it. But the path is not direct. Mahai, his voice, a low rumble, addressed the council. Cyril Vadami's delusion nearly consumed us. He saw only the weapon, the tool of dominion. He refused to acknowledge the very enemy that necessitated its creation. This war, our suffering, it was the price of that blindness. His gaze swept over their faces, lingering on the former loyalists of Vadami, whose expressions were a mixture of shame and dawning comprehension. The dreadnought is not merely a warship, it is a library, a warning, and a testament to a galactic civilization that nearly fell. It speaks of alliances, of cooperation, on a scale we have only dreamed of. A younger Shyuum, Minister Dural, shifted nervously. But an alliance with species we have historically deemed lesser? Brutes, elites, grunts. They are savages, prone to irrationality. Zaitan turned, his dark eyes fixing on Dural. Savages who faced their own flood outbreaks. Savages who survived where others perished. The archives detail their struggles, their resilience. The forerunners in their final moments sought to unite all sentient life against the flood. They failed, not because of the lesser species, but because of their own hubris and the fractured nature of their alliances. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. We have been given a second chance. The dreadnought is the key to unlocking this unity, not through conquest, but through shared terror and mutual self-preservation. A map of the known galaxy shimmered into existence, projected from the central console. The dreadnought's current position was a tiny pulsing dot. Around it, other dots representing known species and their territories flickered. Mahi pointed to a region of space far from Janjur Qom, a swirling vortex of uncharted nebulae and nascent star systems. The Forerunner data speaks of a hidden path, a series of ancient waypoints, cloaked by natural phenomena and temporal distortions. These aren't merely faster-than-light routes. They are gateways to the deepest secrets of the Forerunner Empire and, critically, to the advanced countermeasures against the flood. The concept was staggering. Their current slipspace technology, while advanced, was crude compared to what the dreadnought hinted at. This was not merely faster travel, but a reshaping of spatial reality itself. These waypoints, Zaitan elaborated, are protected by ancient guardians, automated defense systems, and environmental hazards that would rip apart any conventional fleet. The dreadnought is the only vessel capable of navigating them, the only key to unlocking these hidden paths. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of venturing into uncharted, perilous space, relying solely on an alien vessel, was a terrifying prospect. But the alternative, remaining on Janjur Qom, waiting for the inevitable return of the flood, was even more so. Our first objective, Mahi declared, his voice firm, is to secure the first waypoint. The data indicates it is located within the territory of the Sangheli. They are a warrior culture, proud and fiercely independent. They will not be easily swayed. They will be swayed by the truth, Zaitan countered, a grim determination in his tone. The truth of the flood presented by the Forerunner itself. We do not go to them with threats, but with a warning and with the promise of salvation. The dreadnought rumbled, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to course through Maki's very bones. It wasn't a sound of aggression, but of dormant power stirring. The ship was not just a vessel. It was an entity, a silent partner in their desperate quest. Its ancient technology, once a symbol of the Forerunner's unparalleled might, now represented their only hope for survival. The power it wielded was immense, capable of wiping out entire fleets. Yet Maki knew, with a certainty that chilled him, that its true strength lay not in destruction, but in revelation. It would force the galaxy to see what Sural Vadami had so vehemently denied. The ship's internal diagnostics flickered, displaying complex energy readings and trajectory calculation. The journey to the first waypoint would be long and fraught with unknown dangers. The Sangheli were a formidable force, their honor-bound society a stark contrast to the Shyuum's manipulative hierarchy. Uniting them with the Kovas and Jerome's faction, much less the other disparate species of the galaxy, would be an unprecedented diplomatic challenge. Mokhi watched the star chart, a silent prayer forming in his mind. The dreadnought Hadme was their chosen path, their terrifying salvation. It was a path carved not by their own design, but by the desperate legacy of a fallen civilization. They were no longer merely Shyuum, but reluctant inheritors of a cosmic burden, guided by an ancient machine towards an uncertain future. The fate of their species, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on their ability to forge unity from terror and to wield the ultimate power not for conquest, but for survival. The journey into the unknown had begun. The silence of the bridge was broken only by the low hum of the dreadnought, a sound that was both a promise and a warning. The star metal beast pulsed, a deep, resonant thrum vibrating through the deck plates beneath Moki Kovas's clawed feet. This sound, once a prelude to cosmic devastation, now heralded a living archive, an oracle of survival. Within the dreadnought's primary chamber, a massive holographic projection shimmered, displaying a dizzying galaxy-spanning map. Known and unknown star systems spun in a cosmic dance, as previously unseen waypoints flared into being, tiny beacons marking Forerunner caches, dormant defense networks, and, most critically, inactive flood containment facilities. The coordinates are precise. Zaitan Jerome's voice, usually a rasp of barely contained fury, was now tinged with reverence. He indicated a cluster of these nascent waypoints deep in uncharted space. These aren't just armories, Mahi. These are strategic vulnerabilities for the flood, and potentially well springs of strength for us. Mohi adjusted the intricate silver circlet on his brow, the weight of the Shyuum Council's expectations, a tangible pressure. The dreadnought had unveiled a cosmic chessboard, transforming the Shyuum, once petty squabblers over dwindling resources, into reluctant strategists. The sheer scale, to think such wisdom lay dormant, awaiting our awakening, while we tore ourselves apart on Janjur Qom. The bitter taste of their recent civil war lingered, a stark reminder of their collective short-sightedness. The ancient vessel had not only revealed the looming horror of the flood, but also exposed the folly of their internal strife. The council members, a disparate assembly of former rivals, now unified by terror and a desperate hope, murmured. Their fear of the flood was a potent catalyst, but the sheer power emanating from the ancient craft was an equally compelling draw. It was a weapon, yes, yet its true force lay in its accumulated knowledge, its capacity to guide them. The Sangheli will pose a challenge. Elder Vadami, a venerable Shyuum whose eyes had witnessed countless seasons of conflict, observed, his voice a low rumble. Their pride is legendary, their martial prowess undeniable. They won't readily embrace the counsel of another species, even when faced with such an existential threat. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford, Moki countered, his gaze sweeping over the holographic star map. The dreadnought reveals the galaxy's harsh truth, Elder. It reveals the flood's vast scope, and it reveals that no single species, not even the Shyuum, can stand against it alone. The Sangheli are unparalleled warriors. We require their might, their discipline, their ferocity. He paused, a new thought solidifying. But we must approach them not as petitioners, but as messengers of a shared destiny. We must offer not subjugation, but partnership. Janjur Qom nodded in agreement, a rare display of solidarity between the two who had long been antagonists in the Civil War. The dreadnought possessed a unique ability to dissolve old animosities. The star metal beast speaks of a galactic tapestry, Maki, of interconnectedness, of vital symbiosis. It demonstrates that even the smallest threads are crucial to the whole. We are not merely seeking allies, we are mending a fractured universe. A new holographic display flickered into existence beside the star map, showing a stylized representation of the dreadnought itself, its intricate internal mechanisms glowing with a cool blue light. Data streams flowed across its surface, revealing schematics for devices designed to disrupt flood spore dispersal, to create localized energy fields that repelled the parasitic organisms, and even, chillingly, to neutralize advanced flood forms. The sheer ingenuity of the Forerunner technology was breathtaking, a testament to a civilization that had once borne the mantle of galactic guardianship. These countermeasures are formidable, Katara, a young Shyuum scientist, breathed, her fingers hovering near the projection, but they are designed for widespread deployment across immense distances. The dreadnought's guidance is absolute, but its operational capacity is limited by its singular nature. We need fleets, ground forces, engineers, more than Janjur Qom can supply. Precisely, Mahi affirmed, his gaze fixed on the image of the ancient vessel. The dreadnought is not a weapon to be wielded by one, but a beacon to unite all. It illuminates the path, but we must traverse it together. The Sangheli, with their disciplined fleets and their formidable warrior culture, are the logical first step. They are strong, honorable, and possess the logistical infrastructure to deploy these countermeasures effectively. The discussion shifted to strategy, to the delicate ballet of diplomacy and shared urgency. How to persuade a proud warrior race to abandon millennia of independent thought and join a nascent alliance guided by a species they had historically disdained. The dreadnought revelations were compelling, but the Sangheli would demand tangible proof, not just prophecy. We must bring them here, Zayden declared, his voice firm. To the dreadnought itself, let them feel its hum, witness the revelations firsthand. Let them grasp the truth of the flood and the truth of this ancient guide. Mahi pondered this. It was a bold maneuver, fraught with peril, bringing the Sangheli, potentially hostile, onto their most valuable asset, their sole hope. But the alternative, a galaxy consumed by the flood, was unthinkable. The star metal beast had revealed the true face of cosmic horror, and in doing so, had offered the only path to salvation, unity. It will be a monumental undertaking, Elder Vadami conceded, a flicker of grudging respect in his ancient eyes. To extend such an invitation, to share such a discovery, it is unprecedented. Unprecedented times demand unprecedented actions, Mahi replied, a newfound resolve hardening his features. The Shyuum had been forced to look beyond their petty squabbles, beyond their own planet. The star metal beast, a relic of a vanished civilization, had become the improbable architect of their future, demanding a unity they would never have sought on their own. The choice was stark: unite or face oblivion. The hum of the dreadnought, once a harbinger of dread, now resonated with the fragile promise of a new dawn. Whispers of power. The atmosphere within the dreadnought's core chamber was a tapestry of muted hums and the soft rhythmic pulse of the ancient machine. Mahi Kovus, his eyes still wide with the echoes of the future glimpsed through its vast archives, traced the intricate glowing conduits that webbed across the chamber walls. The raw power emanating from the Forerunner artifact was a palpable pressure against his skin, a thrumming reminder of both the salvation and the terror it represented. Zayden Jerome, ever the pragmatist, stood a pace behind him, his expression a careful mask, though Mahi could detect the subtle tremor in his hand as he ran it over a cool, obsidian-like surface. The Sangheli will demand proof, Zitan stated, his voice a low rumble. They value honor above all else. A vision, however profound, will not be enough to sway them from their ancient grudges. Mahi turned, the light from the dreadnought's central spire reflecting in his eyes. Then we give them proof. We show them not just the what of the flood, but the how, the tactical vulnerabilities, the systemic weaknesses, the very blueprints of their demise, all laid bare by this living history bit. He gestured to the shimmering data streams that cascaded down the chamber's walls, depicting gruesome, undeniable truths about the parasitic horror. We show them that their glorious combat, their individual prowess, will be meaningless against a foe that consumes all. We show them the only path to victory is together. The weight of their decision settled between them to reveal such a trove of power, to risk its secrets falling into hostile hands, was a gamble of galactic proportions, but the dreadnought's lessons were clear. The flood did not discriminate. It devoured Sangheli and San Shyuum with equal, indiscriminate hunger. And what of our own factions? Zitan pressed, his gaze piercing. The reformists will see this as heresy, an unholy alliance. The loyalists will see it as a betrayal of our divine right to rule. Mahi's jaw tightened. The memories of their brutal civil war, the shattered cities, and the countless dead still stung. They will see what we show them. We bring the Sangheli here, to this very chamber. They will witness the dreadnought's truth, just as we did. And then we will present the unified front to our own people. The message must be clear. Unite or perish. There is no third option. He paused, then added, his voice gaining a hard edge. Any who stand against this, who cling to the old ways in the face of annihilation, will be dealt with swiftly, decisively. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken implications. Zitan nodded slowly, a grim acceptance in his eyes. The pragmatic politician understood the necessity of ruthless action in the face of existential threat. Preparations for the Sangheli delegation were meticulous. The journey to the dreadnought's hidden berth was shrouded in the utmost secrecy, a clandestine pilgrimage designed to impress upon the warlike species the gravity of their summons. Mohi and Zitan knew that an invitation alone would not suffice. The Sangheli were a proud people steeped in tradition and a fierce sense of self-reliance. They would need a display of power, a gesture of respect, and an undeniable truth that transcended their ingrained animosity. When the Sangheli warships, sleek and predatory, finally emerged from slip space near the dreadnought's concealed orbit, a palpable tension crackled through the San Shyuum command center. 3 vessels, each a testament to Sangheli military might, accompanied the flagship of the Arbiter, Ripa Moreme. They come in force, one of Mahi's tactical officers murmured, his voice laced with apprehension. As expected, Zitan replied, his gaze fixed on the main view screen. They will not be seen as weak. The Sangheli delegation, led by Ripa Morami himself, arrived on a heavily armed transport. As the ramp lowered, revealing the imposing figures of the Sangheli warriors, each clad in ornate, gleaming armor, a silent ripple of unease spread through the Shyuum honor guard. Ripa Morami, a towering figure even among his kin, moved with an arrogant grace, his eyes dark and sharp, sweeping over their small, welcoming party. Mahi and Zitan stepped forward, their robes rustling softly in the filtered air of the hangar. "Arbiter Morami," Mahi began, his voice calm and steady, despite the tremor of anticipation in his chest. "We welcome you to this sacred place." Ripa Morami's mandibles twitched in what might have been a sneer. "Sacred? You speak of sanctity while inviting us, your eternal enemies, to a place of your hidden power? What trickery is this, Shyuum?" His voice was a guttural growl, echoing with centuries of scorn. "No trickery, Arbiter," Zitan interjected, his tone firm. "Only truth. A truth that transcends our petty squabbles. A truth that threatens to extinguish both our species and every other from the galaxy." The Sangheli warrior's eyes narrowed. "Explain yourselves." Mahi raised a hand, gesturing towards the entrance to the dreadnought's interior. "That explanation lies within. We ask only that you witness it with an open mind, for the fate of all life may depend on your understanding." Reluctantly, with suspicion radiating from every one of his warriors, Ripa Morami followed Mahi and Zitan into the labyrinthine corridors of the dreadnought. The air grew heavier, the silence more profound. As they delved deeper into the ancient machine, the Sangheli warriors, initially disdainful, became visibly more cautious, their hands instinctively resting on the hilts of their energy swords as the sheer scale and alien nature of the Forerunner technology began to impress itself upon them. The journey culminated in the core chamber. As they stepped into the vast, shimmering space, the Sangheli delegation collectively gasped. The cascading data streams, the thrumming energy, the monumental scale of the central spire. It was unlike anything they had ever witnessed. Their initial suspicion gave way to awe, then to a palpable unease as the vivid simulations of the flood began to manifest on the chamber walls. Mahi stood before the Sangheli, his voice projected with an amplified clarity that resonated through the chamber. "This is the flood, a cosmic horror, a parasite that consumes all organic life, transforming it into a grotesque mockery of its former self. It spreads like a plague, infecting minds, bodies, entire worlds." Images flashed across the walls, bloated forms shambling through ruined cities, skeletal structures twisted into instruments of war, planets consumed by an unholy biomass. The Sangheli watched in stunned silence, their proud postures slowly slumping, their faces etched with a dawning horror They had faced countless foes, but nothing like this. The sheer, relentless, biological terror was a concept alien to their warrior code. This dreadnought had, Zaitan continued, pointing to the central spire, is a forerunner archive, a living record of their struggle against this very enemy. It holds the sum total of their knowledge, their triumphs, and their ultimate failure. He paused, allowing the gravity of the words to sink in. It reveals the flood's vulnerabilities, its weaknesses, its systematic flaws, and it shows us the only way to defeat it. On the walls, new simulations began to play. Intricate tactical overlays, genetic sequencing data, schematics of ancient forerunner weapons designed to combat the parasite. The Sangheli watched, their warlike minds slowly beginning to grasp the complex strategic implications. This was not a foe that could be met with brute force alone. It required understanding, precision, and an unprecedented level of cooperation. Ripa Morame, who had remained stoic throughout the initial presentation, finally spoke, his voice hoarse, stripped of its usual bravado. This is real. Mohie met his gaze, his expression unwavering. As real as the stars above us, Arbiter, more real perhaps than any threat either of our peoples have ever known. The dreadnought does not lie, Zaitan added, his voice resonating with an unshakable conviction. It merely reveals what is. We offer you not subjugation, Arbiter, but partnership, a partnership born of necessity, forged in the fires of a shared extinction. The Arbiter stood in silence for a long moment, his eyes scanning the horrifying projections, then the intricate counter-strategies, the weight of millennia of animosity, of bitter warfare between their species, seemed to press down on him. But the undeniable truth of the dreadnought's revelations was a force even his pride could not withstand. The survival of his species, of all species, hung in the balance. Finally, Ripa Morame turned to Muki and Zaitan, his mandibles spread in a gesture that was not quite a smile, but held a grim acceptance. Show us then, Shyuum. Show us how we fight this abomination, and show us how we fight it together. A fragile truce. The air within the dreadnought's primary observation chamber thrummed with a tension far older than the Shyuum Civil War, a palpable static born of two ancient species forced into an uncomfortable proximity. Arbiter Ripa Morame's crimson armor seemed to drink the pale, ambient light, his mandibles twitching as he stared at the holographic projection of a flood-ravaged world. Around him, his Sangheli delegation, a phalanx of silent, armored titans, radiated a cautious defiance. Muki Kovas, ever the pragmatist, stood at the dreadnought's core interface, her slender fingers tracing patterns across the glowing console. Janjur Qom, a figure of stoic authority, watched the Sangheli with an intensity that bordered on challenge. The Shyuum elders, their faces etched with the lingering fear of the flood, shifted nervously. You have seen the truth, Arbiter. Muki's voice was calm, yet carried the weight of the dreadnought's revelations, the parasitic horror that consumes all life indiscriminately. It cares not for your honor, nor for our divine wisdom. Ripa Morami turned, his gaze sweeping over the Shyuum. We have seen a potential threat, and we have seen the power you now wield. This dreadnought, it is a weapon that could turn the tide of any conflict, even against our own. His voice, a resonant growl, filled the chamber. A weapon we had no hand in creating, Zaitan interjected, his voice firm. A tool of a bygone era, yes, but one that offers solutions, not just destruction. Its archives contain not only the history of the flood's blight, but also the very countermeasures developed by the forerunners. A murmur rippled through the Shyuum elders. The concept of using forerunner technology for salvation, rather than merely venerating it, was still a radical departure from millennia of tradition. Ripa Morami's gaze narrowed. Countermeasures. You speak of magic, prophets. We speak of war. And in war, allies must be trusted. For generations, our blades have clashed. Now you propose we stand shoulder to shoulder, guided by a machine of unknown intent, against an enemy we only now comprehend? The intent is clear, Arbiter, Mahai countered, her voice gaining an edge. Survival. The dreadnought's forerunner creators in their hubris failed to eradicate the flood, but their records, their scientific breakthroughs, offer a path not of faith alone, but of reasoned action. Imagine, Arbiter, fleets equipped with shielding technologies capable of repelling flood spores, weapons calibrated to disrupt their neural networks, coordinated strikes guided by predictive algorithms that anticipate their every move. She gestured to a new projection, a schematic of a forerunner anti-flood defense grid, intricate and complex, glowing with arcane energies. This is what the dreadnought offers, and not just a shield, but a sword, a means to not merely survive, but to eradicate. The Sangheli delegates rumbled, a collective sound of awe and apprehension. The sheer scale of the technology, the promise it held, was undeniable. And what of our civil war? Ripa Morami challenged, turning to the Shyuum elders. You, who were so eager to tear each other apart for scraps of power, now propose a grand alliance. What guarantees your own unity will hold when the immediate threat recedes? The question hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the fissures that still ran deep within Shyuum society. Mohi met his gaze unflinchingly. The civil war, Arbiter, was born of ignorance and competing ambitions. The flood offers a singular ambition, life. We have seen the consequences of our division. We have paid the price in blood and terror. She paused, her voice softening, yet retaining its steel. The dreadnought has shown us not just the horror without, but the potential within us. If we choose to unite, it offers a focus, a common enemy, a shared purpose that transcends our petty squabbles. Zaitan stepped forward. Our unity will be forged in the crucible of this war, Arbiter, just as yours will be. We will pool our resources, our intellect, our very lives to ensure that Janjur Qom, and indeed the galaxy, does not become another silent, consumed world. He extended a hand, not to Mohi, but gesturing towards the Sangheli. We propose a covenant, an alliance of necessity, yes, but one founded on a shared understanding of existential dread. We will share the dreadnought's knowledge. We will build a new future together upon the ashes of our past conflicts. Ripa Morami looked from Mohi to Zaitan, then to the silent, watchful Sangheli behind him. The choice was clear. Cling to ancient grievances and face oblivion, or embrace a fragile, unprecedented unity and fight for a chance at survival. The thought of bowing to the San Shyuum, of taking their counsel, was bitter. Yet the images of the flood, the sheer, unimaginable scale of its hunger, burned in his mind. He stepped forward, his heavy boots echoing on the dreadnought's floor. His hand, sheathed in gauntlet, rose. We have seen the enemy, prophets, and we have seen the instrument of its undoing. The Sangheli will fight. We will stand with you. His voice was a promise, hard-edged but resolute. But know this, our blades will be watching, and our trust will be earned, not given. Mohi offered a slight nod, a flicker of relief, easing the tension in her shoulders. Zaitan simply inclined his head, a silent acknowledgement of the monumental shift that had just occurred. The fragile truce had been struck. The first hesitant step towards the covenant had been taken, not out of reverence for the divine, but out of a shared primal fear and the cold, hard logic of survival. The dreadnought, silent and immense, seemed to hum with a new purpose, its ancient mechanisms stirring to life, ready to guide its new, unlikely masters into a war that would redefine their very existence. The galaxy, unaware, teetered on the brink, oblivious to the desperate, unprecedented alliance forming in its shadowed corners, an alliance born of terror and the promise of ancient, forgotten power. The path of unity, the dreadnought's grand chamber, still thrummed with the echoes of Ripa Morami's grudging assent. His face, rigid with suppressed fury, betrayed the maelstrom beneath his warrior's exterior. Mohi Kovus, ever the pragmatist, perceived not the lingering animosity, but the nascent tendril of an idea, poised to either bloom into salvation or wither into oblivion. Janjur Qom, his gaze incisive, scrutinized the Sangheli arbiter, keenly aware of the immense price of this concession. Your pledge is given, arbiter, Zaitan's voice, a deep resonance, cut through the momentary hush. Yet a promise is fleeting breath without action. The dreadnought Amarat has articulated its will, its purpose, now inextricably linked with our very survival, demands more than a temporary ceasefire on Janjur Qom. It compels a genuine cessation of hostilities a unification of our disparate species. A shiver of apprehension spread through the Shyuum delegates. The Civil War had bled them dry for generations. The schism between High Council and separatist factions, a festering wound. Unification seemed an unattainable fantasy, even with the terrifying shadow of the flood looming. Unification, scoffed a high-ranking Shyuum elder from the separatist contingent, his voice thin with indignation. With the very high counselors who have denied us our rightful standing, who have sequestered the ancient texts and obscured the true path. Kovas pivoted, her eyes ablaze. Rightful standing, true path. These are the trivial squabbles of infants, elder, when a cosmic horror stalks the void. The Dreadnought's archives make no mention of rightful standing or true paths for a species devoured by the parasitic scourge. They speak only of annihilation. Her voice, though calm, sliced through the chamber's tension like a scalpel. The Dreadnought offers the blueprint, but we must supply the resolve. The Forerunners did not endure through internal strife. Ripa Morame, his crimson armor gleaming under the chamber's ethereal glow, watched the internal Shyuum quarrel with a grim satisfaction that swiftly curdled into impatience. Your incessant bickering holds no interest for me, he growled, his hand instinctively resting on his energy sword's hilt. My people adhere to their own traditions, their own honor. We do not bend to the caprices of fractured leadership. If you cannot even unite your own kind, how do you envision leading an alliance against a foe such as the flood? The barb found its mark, silencing the protesting elder. Kovas met Ripa Morame's challenge with unyielding resolve. You speak truth, Arbiter. We cannot, but we will. The Dreadnought has unveiled the flood's true nature. It has laid bare the ultimate peril, and in doing so, it has offered a singular pledge. The wisdom not merely to survive, but to purge this horror from the galaxy. This promise, this knowledge, is the only currency that matters now. She gestured to the shimmering holographic displays that still pulsed with data streams from the Dreadnought's core. Its systems are deepening their awakening. This is not merely a vessel. It is a repository of Forerunner sagacity, a living chronicle of anti-flood countermeasures, of technological marvels beyond our comprehension. But to unlock its full potential, to truly wield its power, demands a unified endeavor, a shared objective, a convergence of our collective intellects and resources. A divided species will be overwhelmed. A coalition, guided by the Dreadnought's unparalleled insights, might just prevail. Janjur Qom stepped forward, his presence commanding. The Dreadnought's prime directive is the containment and eradication of the flood. It has assessed our capabilities, our divisions, our strengths. It has charted a course, not a path of conquest, but one of collaboration. It speaks of the covenant, a bond forged in sheer necessity, a multi-species alliance dedicated to the singular existential threat. The term, the covenant, lingered in the air, alien yet potent. It felt less like a political accord and more like a sacred vow whispered by the ancient technology itself. Ripa Morimi shifted, his gaze sweeping over the assembled Shyuum. A covenant, you say? And what role do the Sangheili play in this coalition? Are we to be your cannon fodder, your shock troops, while you, with your newfound forerunner trinket, dictate terms? Muki Kovas shook her head. No, Arbiter. The Dreadnought's intelligence has identified the Sangheili as indispensable to this undertaking. Your martial prowess, your unwavering discipline, your honor-bound commitment, these are assets the Dreadnought has deemed essential. It envisions a military backbone, a bulwark against the flood's relentless tide, and a spear to pierce its very heart. Your arbiter, your warriors, will be vital. And what of other species? A Shyuum separatist inquired, a hint of disdain in his voice. Are we to invite every primitive creature to this grand alliance? The Lekolo, the Ungoi, they are barely sentient. Zitan Jerome's voice was sharp. The Dreadnought does not discriminate by perceived primitiveness. It evaluates utility, adaptability, and potential. It has indeed identified other species, species whose unique physiologies, intelligence, or sheer numbers could contribute to the war effort. The Lekgolo for their hive mind intellect and destructive power, the Ungoi for their rapid adaptability and potential for mass deployment. This is not about superiority, but about survival. Every hand, every mind, every resource will be needed. The concept was revolutionary, profoundly unsettling. The Shyuum had always considered themselves the apex of galactic intelligence, guided by their interpretations of forerunner relics. To be suddenly informed that other lesser species were not only valuable, but essential, constituted a paradigm shift of seismic proportions. Mahik Kovus foresaw the genesis of a new conflict, even as the old one threatened to abate. The road to unity will be arduous, she conceded, her voice softer now, more conciliatory. Centuries of dogma and division will not dissolve overnight. But the alternative is certain annihilation. The Dreadnought provides the means, the knowledge, the strategic direction. It demonstrates the how. But the will, the courage to shed our historical grievances, to forge a new future from the ashes of our past, that, my people, must originate within us. She turned to Ripa Morimi, her gaze unwavering. Arbiter, your agreement was the first critical stride. Now we must take the second. The Dreadnought has pinpointed key strategic locations on Janjur Qom, areas where our civil war has been most entrenched, where vital resources are being squandered. It proposes a series of immediate ceasefires, followed by a phased integration of forces under its guidance. This is not a capitulation, nor an absorption. It is a strategic realignment, dictated by an intelligence far superior to our own, for a purpose far grander than any of our individual ambitions. Ripa Morami stared into the pulsing core of the dreadnought's central console, its ancient energy humming a silent, terrifying promise. He grasped the enormity of the undertaking, the sheer audacity of uniting such disparate peoples, even his own, beneath a single banner. He felt the weight of his ancestors' expectations, the ingrained distrust of the San Shyuum, the fierce pride of his warriors. Yet, he also felt the cold dread of the flood, a primal fear that superseded all else. The dreadnought offered not just a weapon, but a vision, a desperate gamble for survival. "Show me," Ripa Morami finally uttered, his voice a low growl, the raw sound of a warrior bracing himself for an impossible fight. "Show me this path to unity, and show me how we end this flood, once and for all." The chamber, once fraught with tension and suspicion, now held a fragile, burgeoning hope. The dreadnought in its silent, omniscient wisdom, began to project new schematics, new strategic overlays, detailing the initial steps of a grand, desperate alliance. The Covenant, born from fear, guided by ancient technology and driven by the terrifying imperative of survival. The civil war on Janjur Qom, once an insurmountable barrier, was now merely the first hurdle on a much larger, more perilous journey. Secrets of the Forerunners. The dreadnought's core pulsed, a deep, resonant thra that vibrated through Janjur Qom, echoing not just in the chamber, but in the very consciousness of those assembled. With a delicate truce newly forged, the San Shyuum leaders, Maki Kovas and Janjur Qom, alongside a visibly reluctant Ripa Morami, now surveyed a freshly revealed section of the ship's control room. Holographic projections blossomed into intricate constellations of data and ancient script, bathing the polished, dark metal surface in an otherworldly glow. "This," Janjur Qom began, his voice barely a whisper of awe, "is where true wisdom resides. The dreadnought has analyzed our histories, our current conflicts, and now it offers its counsel." A colossal holographic star map unfurled, displaying not only their own galaxy, but countless others, alive with swirling nebula and distant, unattainable suns. Then, a single, malevolent green blight erupted, pulsing with insidious intent. It consumed star systems with terrifying speed, leaving only a bleak emptiness in its wake. "The flood," Maki Kovas murmured, the name a bitter taste on his tongue. "It reveals the scope of their dominion." The map reoriented, drawing their own galaxy into sharper focus. Worlds once teeming with life were now sterile husks, ravaged by the Emerald Plague. The Shyuum watched in horrified silence, their recent squabbles fading into insignificance before such cosmic devastation. Even the typically stoic Ripa Morame felt a shiver trace his spine. The Sangheli had faced innumerable foes, but this was an enemy that devoured existence itself. The dreadnought streamed data, translating ancient forerunner glyphs into a complex tapestry of images and text. It meticulously detailed the flood's life cycle, its horrifying adaptability, its insatiable hunger. Worlds vibrant with life became biomass. Sentient beings were twisted into grotesque puppets, their minds consumed. The Forerunners' desperate struggle and ultimate sacrifice to contain the horror unfolded before them in a rapid, heartbreaking montage. They knew. Janjur Qom breathed, his eyes wide with a blend of awe and terror. They comprehended the ultimate evil. A new projection materialized, showcasing a myriad of Forerunner devices, weapons, containment fields, analytical instruments, all designed to combat the flood. One artifact, a massive ring-shaped construct, dominated the display, its purpose unsettlingly ambiguous. The dreadnought head then highlighted a specific section of its internal schematics, a chamber deep within its colossal hull. This chamber, it indicated, housed a repository of Forerunner knowledge, a key to eradication. The dreadnought is more than a warship, Maki Kovus explained, his voice gaining conviction. It is a vault, a library. It contains the means to fight back, to understand the flood, perhaps even to defeat it. Ripa Morami, having silently absorbed the horror, finally spoke, his voice a low growl. And you believe this machine will simply yield its secrets? Forerunners were not renowned for their generosity. It understands the threat, Arbiter, Janjur Qom countered, turning to face the Sangheli. It has witnessed the flood's resurgence. Its directives are clear. Safeguard life, and the flood imperils all life. The dreadnought then projected a series of scenarios. One depicted Janjur Qom, their homeworld, consumed by the green blight, followed by Sanghelios and every other known world. Another scenario, however, offered a different outcome. A multi-species coalition, united by a common purpose, wielding Forerunner technology against the flood, pushing back the tide of infection. This alliance, the dreadnought's projection suggested, was the sole viable path to survival. Maki Kovus stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the assembled Shyuum before settling pointedly on Ripa Morami. The dreadnought has unveiled the truth. Our civil war, our petty squabbles, they are less than meaningless in the face of this. We stand on the precipice of annihilation, but we also stand at the threshold of unprecedented power, unprecedented knowledge. He gestured to the holographic depiction of the multi-species alliance. The Covenant, that is what the dreadnought calls it, an alliance of necessity, forged in terror, yet sustained by the desperate hope of survival. It demands we set aside our differences, unite our strengths, and embrace the wisdom of the forerunners. Whispers rippled through the Shyuum contingent. The notion of allying with lesser species, especially their ancient rivals, the Sangheili, was anathema to many. Yet, the images of devoured worlds, of their own species consumed, were burned into their minds. Qian Shai, an elder and staunch conservative, stepped forward, his expression a mingling of awe and skepticism. And these secrets, this key to eradication, what demands does it make? What price must we pay for such power? The dreadnought responded by displaying a single stark image: the flood, growing stronger, faster, devouring everything. The implicit answer was unequivocal. The price of inaction was everything. Zaitan, Jerome seized the moment. The price, Kayan, is our prejudice, our pride, our division. The dreadnought offers us a path to survival, but it requires a fundamental shift in our thinking. We must become more than Shyuum, more than Sangheili. We must become a unified force, guided by the wisdom of the ancients, armed with their technology. Ripa Morami's gauntlet clenched. He had witnessed the raw power of the dreadnought firsthand. He had seen the terrifying projections of the flood, and he felt the chilling certainty that this was no deception. The Sangheili prized honor and strength. To surrender to such an insidious enemy without a fight was unthinkable. Yet, to ally with the Shyuum, it was a bitter pill to swallow. "Arbiter," Mohi Kovas said, addressing him directly, his voice pleading. "Your people are warriors. They understand sacrifice, and they understand survival. The dreadnought's guidance, combined with our unified strength, offers the only hope. Will you stand with us, or will you allow your pride to doom us all?" Ripa Morami looked at the holographic depiction of the ring-shaped construct, then back at the creeping green blight. He thought of his home world, of his kin, of the countless generations of Sangheili warriors. The shame of alliance warred with the primal instinct for survival. "Show us," Ripa Morami finally commanded, his voice rough, "this key to eradication. Show us the path. If this machine truly holds the power to stop this plague, then the Sangheili will consider its counsel. But make no mistake, Shyuum, this is not for you. This is for all life." A new access point shimmered into existence on the dreadnought's console, a pathway deeper into its colossal structure. The low hum intensified, a silent invitation to unravel the Forerunner's ultimate secret, to confront the peril and seize the promise of ancient technology, and perhaps to forge a new destiny for all. The unity, fragile and born of fear, was unity nonetheless, and in the looming shadow of the flood, It was their only hope, a treacherous plot, the hum of the dreadnought's core, a sound that had become an almost constant companion, vibrated through the floor plates of the observation chamber. Janjur Qom's eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were glazed with a strange mix of awe and terror as he stared at the swirling nebulae and shattered worlds projected before them. The holographic display, depicting the flood's inexorable advance, was a silent testament to a comic horror beyond their understanding. Kovas, ever the pragmatist, had already moved past the initial shock. He paced the periphery of the chamber, his mind a maelstrom of strategies and contingencies. The key to eradication, Mohi mused, his voice a low growl, and a ring-shaped construct. This machine promises salvation through tools of such immense power, yet it remains silent on the nature of these artifacts. He gestured to the shimmering projections of the ancient Forerunner technology. It is a dangerous gamble, Zaitan, to entrust our survival to a force we barely comprehend, guided by a machine whose motives, however benevolent they appear, remain alien. Zaitan finally tore his gaze from the cosmic devastation. What alternative do we have, Mohi? Our civil war has bled us dry, fragmented our resolve. The flood, if even a fraction of what the dreadnought shows us is true, will consume us utterly, regardless of our internal squabbles. This is not a matter of trust, but of necessity. The survival of all life hangs in the balance. Ripa Morami, silent until now, stepped forward, his mandibles clicking softly. His face, usually a mask of grim determination, was etched with a new, unsettling gravitas. The Sangheili have long held that true strength lies in individual prowess, in the unyielding will of the warrior, but this enemy devours all. It twists life itself into a grotesque parody. Our rivalry with the Shyuum, our ancient grievances, become trivial in the face of such a threat. He looked from Mohi to Zaitan, his golden eyes reflecting the flickering light of the dreadnought's core. I have seen enough. The arbiter of the Sangheili will agree to this covenant. We will stand with you, but not as subordinates, as equals in this desperate fight. His words, though a concession, carried the weight of a promise, a binding oath. Mohi felt a flicker of hope, swiftly followed by a renewed sense of the immense burden they were about to shoulder. The forming of the covenant would not be easy. Their people, steeped in generations of animosity, would resist. But Ripa Morami's resolve, born of witnessing the ultimate horror, was a powerful catalyst. News of the proposed multi-species alliance, championed by the dreadnought pit and backed by the unlikely figures of Makai, Zaitan, and Ripa Morami, rippled through Janjur Qom like a shockwave. For some, it was a beacon of hope in the suffocating gloom of civil war. For others, it was an abomination, a betrayal of everything their ancestors had fought and died for. High Priest Darkon, a a staunch traditionalist who had vigorously opposed any truce with the Sangheili, saw the dreadnought not as a savior, but as a deceitful harbinger of chaos. He convened a clandestine meeting in the shadowed catacombs beneath the holy city, a place where the air hung heavy with the scent of ancient incense and forgotten rituals. Around him, a dozen other high-ranking priests and military commanders, all sharing his deep-seated prejudice and fear of the alien, gathered. This covenant, Darkon hissed, his voice a sibilant whisper that echoed off the rough-hewn stone walls, is a blasphemy. The dreadnought, a machine of the Ancient Ones, is an instrument of deception. It promises unity and salvation, but offers only servitude to alien races and the abandonment of our sacred traditions. Nay, he paced before them, his ceremonial robes rustling. Machi Kovus and Janjur Qom have been corrupted by its influence, blinded by fear. They would sacrifice our purity, our very essence, for a false peace born of terror. A grizzled military commander, General Varol, pounded a fist on the stone table. The Sangheili are our sworn enemies. To fight alongside them, to share our knowledge, our technology, is unthinkable. It is a weakness that will be exploited. They will turn on us when the flood threat is gone, just as they always have. Precisely, Darkon agreed, a cruel smile twisting his lips. This flood may exist, or it may be a grand illusion, conjured by this machine to manipulate us. But even if it is real, our survival does not depend on consorting with beasts. It depends on our strength, our faith, and our unwavering commitment to the Shyuum way. He paused, letting his words sink in, watching the fear and resentment fester in the eyes of his audience. We must act. We must expose this conspiracy, this treachery, before it consumes us all. We must reclaim our destiny, our right to lead, and cleanse our world of this alien influence. A younger priest, his face pale and drawn, spoke up hesitantly. But the dreadnought's power, it is immense, and the Sangheili, under this arbiter, are a formidable force. To openly defy the proposed covenant, it would be civil war anew, perhaps even more devastating. Darkon's smile widened, revealing teeth filed to sharp points. Open defiance, now that would be foolish. We will work from the shadows, undermining their authority, sowing discord until the people see the truth for themselves. We will target the dreadnought yacht, for it is the linchpin of their foolish alliance. If it can be silenced, if its influence can be broken, then their covenant will crumble. He pulled a small, intricately carved data pad from his robes, its surface glowing with faint blue runes. I have secured schematics of the dreadnought's internal architecture, gleaned from ancient texts and the scattered ramblings of engineers who have dared to venture close to its core. There are vulnerabilities, access points that, if exploited, could disrupt its projections, perhaps even silence its guiding voice. He tapped a specific section of the holographic schematic. The primary power conduits, specifically, a well-placed sabotage disguised as an accident could cripple its ability to communicate, to guide. Varol's eyes gleamed with a predatory light. Sabotage, that I understand, and it will be a glorious act of defiance, a testament to our resolve. Darkon looked around the circle, his gaze lingering on each face. This is not merely about preserving our traditions, my brothers. It is about seizing true power. If Mohi and Zaitan succeed, they will become the undisputed leaders of this covenant. Their influence will be absolute. But if we disrupt their plans, if we expose their weakness and the Dreadnoughid's fallibility, then the people will turn to us. We will be the true saviors, the architects of a San Shyuum future, unblemished by alien touch. A ripple of assent passed through the room. The fear of the flood, though real, was overshadowed by the more immediate, tangible fear of losing control, of sacrificing their established order. Darkon had skillfully played on their prejudices, their anxieties, transforming the existential threat into a political weapon. The stage was set for a perilous internal conflict, one that threatened to unravel the fragile threads of unity before they could even be properly woven. The nascent covenant, born of desperate necessity, was already facing its first treacherous test. Race against annihilation. A deep, resonant thrum vibrated through the deck plates beneath Mohi's hooves, the Dreadnought's perpetual song. It was a duality of sound, a comforting rumble that underscored their newfound might, yet a terrifying bass note hinting at the precipice of oblivion. Holographic schematics shimmered before him, mapping the ancient vessel's intricate internal architecture. Zaitan, poised beside him with an unyielding gaze, tapped a slender finger on primary warp core. Darkon believes this is our gravest vulnerability. Zaitan rasped, his voice barely audible. A direct energy surge would cripple the Dreadnought, or worse, trigger a catastrophic cascade. Mohi's multi-lensed eyes narrowed. He wouldn't dare to destroy the very salvation. It's madness. Madness and unwavering conviction often intertwines in the zealot's mind, Mohi, Zaitan countered, turning fully. Darkon sees this Dreadnought not as deliverance, but as a desecration, a forerunner blasphemy corrupting our sacred traditions. He views our reliance on it as a betrayal of the great journey. A cold dread coiled in Mohi's gut. Darkon's faction, the Sons of the Prophet, had already shattered the fragile peace on Janjur Qom. Their once whispered rhetoric now boomed, their followers multiplying like spores. The alliance with the Sanghili, forged in the fires of shared terror, had only stoked their fury. Ripa Morami's forces are deploying to critical sectors, Mohi stated. His tone clipped. He grasps the gravity of this. His warriors are steadfast, though Some of his Sangheili peers still question this arrangement. Zaitan nodded slowly. The Sangheili are pragmatists. They witness the flood's horrors. They grasp the immediate threat. But Darkon's influence runs deep within our own ranks. Brute force alone won't suffice. We must outmaneuver him, securing the dreadnought not merely with guards, but with a mastery of its systems that eludes his simplistic, destructive aims. Hours bled into days. Mohi and Zaitan, alongside a hand-picked cohort of Shyuum engineers and Sangheili strategists, immersed themselves in the dreadnought's mechanisms. Its forerunner technology was both bewildering and magnificent. They unearthed energy conduits pulsing with an unknown current, weapon systems capable of rending entire starships, and a central data core humming with millennia of amassed knowledge. One evening, under the dreadnought's artificial glow that cast long dancing shadows, Zaitan made an astonishing discovery. A sequence of glyphs concealed beneath layers of diagnostic readouts revealed a fail-safe, an emergency shutdown protocol designed to avert catastrophic overload. It was a double-edged revelation, a means to neutralize a threat, yet also a potential vulnerability if exploited. This is a master key, Zaitan breathed, his voice barely a whisper. It can temporarily disable the core, but it demands a precise input sequence and a unique biosignature for activation. A surge of adrenaline coursed through Mukhi. A biosignature? Ours, or the Forerunners? It appears adaptable, Zaitan explained, tracing a finger across the luminous symbols. It imprints upon the first compatible living being to initiate the sequence, a safeguard against unauthorized use, yet a potent instrument if we can control it. Word of the dreadnought's immense power and the burgeoning alliance had reached Darkon. His informants, embedded deep within the Shyuum hierarchy, reported on the Sangheili presence, the strange new technology, and the increasingly desperate pronouncements from Mohi and Zaitan concerning the flood. In the hidden chambers beneath the grand cathedral, Darkon addressed his sons of the prophet. His voice, usually a soothing balm, now crackled with righteous fury. They conspire with aliens. They profane the very essence of our faith by embracing a pagan weapon. This covenant is a pact with damnation, a surrender to the unknown. The dreadnought is not a vessel of salvation, but a tempting serpent, luring us from the path of the great journey. A murmur of assent rippled through the gathered Shyuum. Their faces, typically serene, were contorted with a mixture of fear and fanaticism. "We must strike now," Darkon declared, his eyes alight with dangerous fervor, "before this blasphemous alliance solidifies, before the dreadnought corrupts us all. We will disable its core, proving that true salvation lies not in alien technology, but in the purity of our faith. We will reclaim our destiny, and cleansed Janjur Qom of this heresy. The attack erupted swiftly, a coordinated multi-front assault. While a diversionary force of Darkon's loyalists engaged Ripa Morami's Sangheili at the dreadnought's primary docking bays, a smaller, more elite team of Shyuum infiltrators, cloaked in shadow, slipped through secondary maintenance hatches. Their objective, the primary warp core. Alarms blared across the dreadnought's interior. Pulsing red emergency lights bathed the gleaming corridors in an ominous glow. Mohi and Zaitan, alerted by the sudden pandemonium, raced towards the core chamber. "They're targeting the core," Mohi shouted, his heart hammering against his ribs. "They grasp its significance." Zaitan, his long robes billowing, was already activating the dreadnought's internal security systems. "The failsafe. We must reach it before they trigger an overload." The core chamber was a maelstrom of conflict. Darkon's infiltrators, surprisingly well-armed, with energy disruptors, struggled to bypass the dreadnought's formidable defenses. Sangheili warriors, their plasma rifles spitting searing bolts, engaged them in a brutal melee. The air crackled with energy, the metallic tang of ozone thick in Mohi's nostrils. Mohi and Zaitan pushed through the chaos, their gaze fixed on the core's control console. A Shyuum infiltrator, a zealot with blazing eyes, lunged at Zaitan, a disruptor humming in his hand. Ripa Morami, his massive frame a blur, intercepted the attacker, his energy sword singing as it cleaved the air. "Get to the fail-safe," Ripa Morami roared, his voice cutting through the din. "We will hold them." Zaitan, his fingers flying across the console, initiated the sequence. The glyphs he had unearthed pulsed, demanding a biosignature. He placed his slender hand on the designated panel. A faint green light emanated from the console, enveloping his hand. An agonizing moment of suspense stretched. Then the dreadnought's hum shifted, a subtle yet profound alteration. The red emergency lights flickered, then dimmed, yielding to a softer, more reassuring amber. The infiltrators, their efforts suddenly futile, found their disruptors sputtering, their attempts to overload the core met with inexplicable resistance. Confusion rippled through their ranks. "What have you done?" one of Darkon's men shrieked, his voice laced with despair. Zaitan, his face pale but resolute, looked at Mohi. "The core is stabilized, temporarily. The failsafe is active, but it means I am now intrinsically linked to this vessel. My life force, in a way, fuels its immediate defense." Mohi stared, a mixture of awe and trepidation washing over him. Zaitan had sacrificed a part of himself, binding his very essence to the ancient ship. The dreadnought, once a mere symbol of alien power, now carried a piece of their own. Ripa Morami's forces, seizing the advantage, swiftly overwhelmed the remaining infiltrators. The battle was over, yet the echo of Darkon's betrayal resonated through the dreadnought's vast chambers. The internal strife, the nascent civil war, had reached a dangerous new escalation. As the Sangheili secured the chamber, Makai approached Zitantin, who still had his hand pressed against the console, a faint glow clinging to his skin. You have bound yourself to it, Zitan, to the dreadnought, to our survival. Zitan finally withdrew his hand, his eyes meeting Makai's. And to the covenant, Mahi, the unity we forge here in the shadow of this immense power is our only hope. Darkon has shown us that division will be our true annihilation. We must be stronger together than we ever could be apart. The dreadnought, now humming with a new, subtle energy, stood as a testament to both their desperation and their nascent unity. The race against annihilation had just begun, and it was clear that the greatest threat might not be the flood alone, but the divisions within their own hearts, the brink of destruction. The tremors had subsided, but a different kind of instability now gripped Janjur Qom. The hum of the dreadnought, once a distant reverence, was an ever-present, almost predatory thrum beneath the crust of the planet. Zitan, now intrinsically linked, felt its pulse resonate through his very bones, a symphony of ancient power and latent destruction. He stood on the precipice of the command spire, the city lights below shimmering like scattered jewels, oblivious to the existential drama unfolding above them. Mahi approached, her usually serene features etched with a newfound severity. The core is stable for now, she stated, her voice a low current against the whine of distant orbital craft. Your integration, Zitan, has averted catastrophe, but it has also amplified Darkon's outrage. He sees this not as a salvation, but a desecration. He would prefer annihilation to innovation, Zitan retorted, the words carrying a strange echo from the dreadnought's core. His perception had sharpened, the world around him rendered with a frightening clarity, yet also a sense of detachment. He understood the dreadnought had, in a way no Shyuum ever had, its intricate systems, its vast power, its ultimate purpose. And he understood them with chilling certainty that Darkon's attack had only scratched the surface of its capabilities. A sudden jarring lurch shook the spire. Alarms blared, a harsh, mechanical shriek that cut through the night. On the holographic display floating before them, orbital defense grids flickered, then vanished. His forces, Makai breathed, her eyes wide with dawning horror. He's striking directly at the planetary defenses. Zitan's vision pulsed, images from the dreadnought bender's internal sensors flooding his mind. Darkon's fleet, a defiant armada of repurposed mining vessels and hastily armed freighters, was attempting to breach Janjur Qom's atmosphere. But it wasn't the number of ships that sent a cold dread through Zitan. It was the targeted precision Darkon was using Forerunner technology, captured from the very dreadnought emit, before its full activation, to bypass defenses. He's using their own weapons against us, Mahi whispered, a grim realization dawning. The plasma lances, The energy projectors, he repurposed them from the salvage that was meant for study. The conflict was no longer a philosophical debate. It was a civil war, brutal and immediate. Explosions blossomed across the upper atmosphere, silent, deadly flowers of light. Ground-based anti-air batteries, once considered impregnable, were systematically being silenced. Panic began to ripple through the city below, visible even from their lofty perch as streams of vehicles attempted to evacuate. Zaitan felt the dreadnought stir, a profound sense of self-preservation emanating from its core. It perceived the threat not just to its current occupants, but to its own intricate mechanisms. A wave of energy radiated from him, a subtle command that only he in his new state could issue. The dreadnought's primary weapon systems, dormant for millennia, began to cycle. "No, Zaitan," Mukhi cried, grabbing his arm. "You can't. We don't understand its full power. It could obliterate the entire fleet, and perhaps the planet along with it. We have no choice." Zaitan's voice was strained, the effort of controlling the colossal vessel visible in the tremors that ran through his body. "He means to destroy the dreadnought hut, to cleanse it of our influence. If he succeeds, we lose our only hope against the flood." The sky above Janjur Qom ignited, not with the frantic bursts of conventional weaponry, but with a blinding emerald lance of energy that erupted from the dreadnought's primary emitter. It was a silent, terrifying spectacle, a beam of pure destructive force that sliced through Darkon's lead vessel, vaporizing it instantly. The ensuing explosion was a brief, violent star in the night. The display before them showed the remaining ships scattering, their formations breaking in disarray. Darkon's arrogance had been met with an ancient, unforgiving wrath. Yet the dreadnought's act of defense was not without consequence. The energy discharge sent a seismic shockwave across the planet, causing buildings to sway and power grids to flicker. "This is not the answer, Zaitan," Mukhi said, her voice trembling. "We cannot fight a civil war with a weapon that threatens to unmake us all. What good is survival if we become the very monsters we seek to defeat?" Zaitan closed his eyes, the echoes of the dreadnought hit's power still thrumming within him. He saw the path of destruction, the potential for ultimate annihilation. But he also saw the path to unity, the dreadnought's internal archives revealing not just weapons but schematics for interstellar travel, for advanced terraforming, for a galactic network of communication and cooperation. The Forerunners, in their infinite wisdom, had prepared for both destruction and creation. "There are other ways," Zaitan finally conceded, the words heavy with the weight of his new understanding. "The dreadnought possesses more than just destructive capability. It can be a beacon, Mukhi, a rallying point for something greater." As if in response, the dreadnought's external lights, usually a soft, internal glow, pulsed outward, bathing the immediate orbital space in a soft, ethereal radiance. It was a signal, a silent declaration of its presence, not as a weapon, but as a landmark. Mahi stared at the display, the retreating remnants of Darkon's fleet looking insignificant against the dreadnought's newfound luminescence. A beacon. For who? Just then, a new set of contacts appeared on the long-range scanners. Not the chaotic signatures of Darkon's forces, but disciplined, powerful vessels emerging from slipspace. Their energy signatures were alien yet familiar. Sangheili, the very species whose emissary, Artas, had been part of the initial discovery, now appeared on the verge of Janjur Qom's system. Artas? Zitan murmured, a flicker of hope amidst the dread. He must have sensed the disturbance, the dreadnought's awakening. He brings his fleet. Mahi looked at Satan, then at the approaching Sangheili armada. This is it, Satan. The brink. We either fall into civil war and annihilate ourselves, or we embrace something entirely new, something that will unite us against the true threat. The dreadnought hummed, a deep, resonating chord that seemed to welcome the approaching Sangheili. The future of Janjur Qom, and perhaps the entire galaxy, now rested on the fragile threads of an unlikely alliance. Forged in the shadow of ancient power and the ever-present threat of the flood, the path to unity was fraught with peril, but the promise of ancient technology, properly wielded, gleamed like a distant star. Mikul's courage. The arrival of the Sangheili fleet, a constellation of needle-thin destroyers and heavy cruisers, brought a strange, almost reverent hush to the chaotic skies above Janjur Qom. Mahi, her eyes still burning from the dreadnought's searing light, watched from the command deck of the High Charity's orbital position. Zitan, no longer a mere pilot, but an extension of the ancient vessel, had broadcast a message, not in Shyuum, but in a language that resonated deep within the primordial circuits of the Forerunner creation. It was a call, a summons, and the Sangheili had answered. They halt at the planetary exclusion zone, a navigation officer reported, his voice a tremor of awe. No hostile maneuvers, they seem to be awaiting instruction. Mahi felt a prickle of unease, a cold sensation that had nothing to do with the vacuum of space. The dreadnought had revealed itself as a weapon of unimaginable power, but also as a beacon, a unifier. Yet the Sangheili were a warrior race, known for their fierce independence and their own ancient, rigid traditions. Would they see the dreadnought as a gift or a challenge? Below, on the devastated surface, the remnants of Darkon's forces were in disarray. The dreadnought's pulse, a surgical strike that had vaporized their siege lines, left a smoking, vitrified scar across the landscape. The surviving loyalist Shyuum, shell-shocked but emboldened, began to regroup, their initial despair replaced by a fragile hope. Mikul, his armor scorched and his face streaked with ash, knelt beside the mangled remains of a hovercraft. The air still carried the acrid scent of ozone and burnt rock. He had witnessed the dreadnought's fury firsthand, a spectacle of both terror and salvation. But what truly resonated with him was not the destruction, but the clarity that followed. The voice of Zaitan, amplified and distorted by the ancient technology, had echoed across the comms, declaring the truth of the flood, of the dreadnought's purpose, and of the desperate need for unity. Around him, other loyalist soldiers stirred. One, a young Shyuum named Ilan, looked up at the hovering dreadnought then at the distant geometric shapes of the Sangheili fleet. What now, Elder Mikkel? He asked, his voice raw. Michael rose, his joints protesting. Now, he said, his gaze fixed on the dreadnought, we listen. We have been given a choice, Ellen. Annihilation or evolution. On the High Charity, Mohi received a direct transmission from the dreadnought. Zaitan's voice, though still tinged with the alien resonance of the Forerunner technology, was clear. Mohi, the Sangheili seek parley. Their leader, a field master named Rurtas, requests direct communication. The dreadnought indicates an ancient understanding between our peoples. Mohi's mind reeled. An ancient understanding. Her historians had never mentioned such a thing. The Shyuum had always considered themselves the sole inheritors of galactic knowledge. Yet, the dreadnought, with its millennia of accumulated wisdom, suggested otherwise. Prepare a secure channel, Makai ordered, her voice betraying none of the internal turmoil, and send an envoy to the Sangheili fleet, a single shuttle, unarmed. The decision was a gamble. To send an envoy into an unknown, potentially hostile fleet was unprecedented. But the situation was unprecedented. The flood was a tidal wave on the horizon, and the dreadnought was offering a lifeboat, albeit one built with alien hands. Within moments, a shuttle bearing the mark of the Shyuum High Council launched from the High Charity. Aboard it was Mikal, chosen for his unwavering loyalty and his recent harrowing experience on the surface. He was to be the first Shyuum to formally greet the Sangheili under these new, world-shattering circumstances. As the shuttle approached the nearest Sangheili destroyer, the Shadow of Intent, Mikal felt a surge of adrenaline. The vessel was a marvel of martial design, sleek and menacing, its energy projectors humming with latent power. He had faced countless dangers in his life, but this felt different. This was not a battle of strength, but a test of wills, of diplomacy, of the very fabric of their future. Inside the Sangheili destroyer, Field Master Artas Vadumi watched the approaching shuttle with a stoic expression. His eyes, keen and ancient, missed nothing. The dreadnought's signal had been unmistakable, a resonant frequency that spoke to something deep within Sangheili lore, a prophecy of a great vessel that would unite the disparate children of the galaxy against the devourer of worlds. He had dismissed it as myth until now. When the Shyuum shuttle docked, the airlock hissed open, revealing Mikal. He stepped onto the deck, his posture erect, his hands clasped before him in a gesture of peace. He was small compared to the towering Sangheili warriors who lined the corridor, their plasma rifles held at parade rest. But his presence radiated a quiet dignity. Rataz, a formidable figure even among his own kind, stepped forward. His armor was a dark, burnished silver, and a faint hum of energy emanated from its plating. "Shyuum," he rumbled, his voice deep and resonant. "You answer the call of the great vessel." Mikal met his gaze, unflinching. "We answer the call of survival, Field Master Aratas. Our people face annihilation. The flood is real. The dreadnought, it offers a path, but not one we can walk alone." Ratas's mandibles twitched, a gesture Mikal vaguely recognized as a sign of contemplation. "The great vessel speaks of an ancient alliance, a covenant against the darkness," Ratas said, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Our prophets have spoken of such a time, but tradition holds that the Shyuum are isolated." "Tradition," Mikal countered, "is a luxury we can no longer afford. The dreadnought has revealed truths beyond our wildest imaginings, truths that shatter our history and rewrite our future. It speaks of common ancestry, of shared vulnerabilities, and of a power that dwarfs all our individual strengths." He paused, then continued, his voice gaining conviction. "The dreadnought did not just repel Darkon's forces. It demonstrated a unity of purpose, a capacity to create as well as destroy. It showed us that we are not alone in this galaxy, and that our combined knowledge, our combined will, is our only hope." Ratas considered Mikal's words, his gaze sweeping over the Shyuum, assessing him not as an enemy, but as a potential ally. The dreadnought's message had been clear. The Shyuum, for all their perceived arrogance, were not the sole inheritors of truth. The ancient technology, now inhabited by one of their own, was forcing a brutal reckoning. "The great vessel has indeed spoken of such things," Ratas finally conceded, the words heavy with the weight of generations of Sangheili belief. "It has shown us visions of the devourer, of worlds consumed. We have seen the destruction it wrought on your planet. And we have seen the power you now wield, though it is not truly yours. It is a power that can be shared, Field Master," Mikal affirmed, sensing a shift in the air. "A power that must be shared. The dreadnought holds the keys to understanding the flood, to defeating it. But it requires more than just Shyuum hands to turn them. It requires a unified galaxy." Ratas extended a hand, a gesture of unexpected respect. Then let us hear what the great vessel truly has to say, San Shyuum Mikal. Let us see if this covenant you speak of is truly the path to salvation. Michael clasped the Sangheli's massive hand, a silent vow exchanged between two species on the precipice of a new, uncertain future. The dreadnought, silent above Janjur Qom, had brought them together, not through conquest, but through a shared, terrifying truth and the promise of ancient, forgotten knowledge. The path forward would be fraught with peril, but for the first time in generations, the San Shyuum and the Sangheli stood on the cusp of something far greater than themselves. The birth of the covenant, the air within the dreadnought's command center crackled, with an energy that felt older than the stars themselves. Zaitan, no longer merely observing the vessel, but intrinsically linked to its vast network, felt the hum of ancient power resonate within his very being. The parley with the Sangheli, an event unthinkable mere days prior, had concluded, leaving behind a fragile understanding, a seed of an alliance. Fieldmaster Artas, his mandibles working, had stared at Mikal with a mix of suspicion and dawning comprehension. The flood, Artas had rumbled, the foreign word sounding like a guttural cough. A parasite that devours all life. Mikal, guided by the dreadnought's subtle infusions of knowledge, had explained with a clarity that surprised even himself. It is not merely consumption, Field Master. It is a perversion, a mockery of life, weaponized. The Forerunners faced it, and it nearly brought the galaxy to its knees. This vessel, it carries a fraction of their understanding, a warning, and a final desperate solution. The Sangheli had demanded proof, and Zaitan, through Mikal, had provided it. Holographic projections, intricate and chilling, bloomed from the dreadnought's conduits, grotesque forms writhing on ravaged worlds, entire civilizations reduced to biomass, a tide of pure, unthinking hunger. The Sangheli warriors, usually stoic, had flinched. The threat was too vast, too absolute to be dismissed as San Shyuum deception. The ancient understanding had proven a more complex point of contention. The dreadnought Piet had revealed fragmented data logs detailing a distant, shared heritage between the San Shyuum and a species resembling the Sangheli, a species that had once stood together against a forgotten enemy. The specifics were veiled, lost to the eons, but the implication was clear. Their peoples, though adversaries now, had once been something more. This revelation had caused a deep disquiet among the Sangheli, clashing violently with their ingrained traditions of glorious combat and solitary dominance. This understanding you speak of, Ratas had finally said, his gaze fixed on Mikal. It means we are not meant to fight each other, but to fight with each other. It means, Mikal had responded, that the galaxy faces a threat so profound that old hatreds must be set aside. It means survival demands unity. It means the covenant. The word whispered for the first time in the dreadnought's core, felt heavy, pregnant with a future yet unwritten. Now, with the Sangheli fleet in orbit, awaiting a more formal council, Zaitan addressed Makai telepathically, the connection seamless within the dreadnought's embrace. The Sangheli are receptive, but fragile. Their pride is a brittle thing, easily shattered. Makai, still on Janjur Qom, but privy to Zaitan's direct feed from the dreadnought pit, replied, her voice a calm counterpoint to the cosmic urgency. Pride can be a tool, Zaitan, and a weapon. We must wield it carefully. What does the dreadnought say of their arbiter, Ripa Morame? Zaitan accessed the vessel's vast data banks, fragments of ancient strategic assessments, and psychological profiles filtering into his consciousness. Ripa Morame is a warrior of unparalleled ferocity, but also of profound conviction. He despises weakness, particularly within his own kind. This proposal, this covenant, will test his very foundations. The image of Ripa Morame materialized before Zaitan's inner eye. A towering figure, his armor scarred, his eyes burning with an almost fanatical zeal. He was the embodiment of Sangheli martial prowess, a figure both revered and feared. To unite such a being with the Shyuum, a species he likely viewed as physically inferior and strategically devious, would be a monumental task. Makai understood. Then we must present this alliance not as a plea, but as an opportunity for glory, for the salvation of all life. Yes, but also for the ultimate test of their martial spirit, the flood. It will provide a worthy opponent, will it not? Zaitan felt a cold dread at Makai's pragmatic assessment. The flood was not an opponent to be glorified, but a horror to be eradicated. Yet, he knew Makai spoke with the cold logic of survival. The dreadnought indicates the flood will push all species to their absolute limits. It offers no easy victories, only desperate struggles. The formal council convened in a neutral sector of space, a fragile truce holding between the two fleets. Ripa Morame stood at the head of the Sangheli delegation, flanked by his most trusted warriors. His presence was formidable, a silent challenge to the Shyuum, Makai, Mikal, and a select few Shyuum diplomats represented their people, Makai's serene demeanor masking the immense pressure she felt. Zaitan, through Mikal, was the dreadnought's voice, its presence a silent, omnipresent observer. The discussions were fraught with tension. Ripa Morame was not easily swayed. He questioned the Shyuum's motives, their history of manipulation, their seemingly sudden benevolence. You speak of ancient understandings and cosmic threats. Ripa Morame's voice boomed, echoing in the sterile council chamber. But your people have waged war upon us for centuries. Why should we believe your sudden change of heart? Makai met his gaze unflinchingly. Because, Arbiter, The galaxy is about to face a foe that cares nothing for our squabbles, our histories, or our pride. It cares only for biomass. The dreadnought has shown us the truth. It has forced us to confront a reality far more terrifying than any of our internecine conflicts. Then Mikkel stepped forward, his voice a conduit for Zaitan's profound connection to the dreadnought. The dreadnought does not lie, Arbiter. It offers a path to survival, an understanding of the true enemy, and the means to combat it. It offers ancient technologies dormant for millennia, capable of turning the tide against the flood. But it requires unity. It requires a covenant of species bound by a shared purpose to preserve life. The dreadnought projected images again, forerunner weapons, dormant and powerful, their potential gleaming with destructive promise. Ancient defensive structures capable of shielding entire worlds, and most compellingly, the chilling, relentless advance of the flood, an endless tide of corruption. The Sangheili warriors watched, their initial skepticism slowly giving way to a grim recognition. The threat was real. The technology was undeniable. Ripa Morami remained silent for a long moment, his gaze sweeping over the holographic projections, then settling on Michael, and by extension, on the unseen Zaitan within the dreadnought. The weight of his people's survival, and indeed the survival of all life, pressed upon him. His tradition demanded strength, unyielding resolve. This alliance, this covenant, felt like a concession. Yet the dreadnought's power, its unassailable knowledge, presented a truth too stark to ignore. Finally he spoke, his voice lower now, stripped of its initial aggression. This covenant, it would demand of us an alliance with those we have called enemies. It would demand a shared purpose, a merging of our strengths. Mohi nodded. It would demand all of that, Arbiter, and more. It would demand a commitment to something greater than ourselves, greater than our individual species. It would demand sacrifice. Ripa Morami looked at his warriors, then back at Mihi and Mikal. The decision was monumental, a betrayal of centuries of conflict, yet also the only path to survival. The flood was a stain upon the galaxy, an insult to the warrior spirit. To fight it, even with the Shyuum, was a noble cause. Then let it be so, Ripa Morami declared, his voice resonating with newfound purpose. Let this covenant be forged. Let us unite against this monstrous enemy. But know this, Shyuum, my people will not be led astray. We will fight with honor, and we will fight for the future of all life, even with you by our side. The dreadnought hummed, a low thrum of ancient power, acknowledging the agreement. The covenant was born, not from mutual affection or shared ideals, but from desperate necessity, forged in the shadow of cosmic horror, and bound by the undeniable promise of forerunner power. The civil war had ended, not with a victor, but with a unified purpose. The galaxy's last hope had taken its first tentative breath. A new dawn for Janjur Qom, a sickly pale illumination filtered through generations of smog and pulverized rock, finally pierced the perpetual gloom of Janjur Qom. It wasn't the vibrant kiss of a life-giving sun, but for the Shyuum assembled on the newly christened Unity Plateau, it felt nothing short of miraculous. Below, the sprawling, war-torn landscape of their homeworld lay exposed, a stark testament to self-inflicted wounds. Yet above, a different kind of healing had begun. Zaitan, his augmented form humming with the dreadnought's integrated power, stood at the precipice. Forerunner alloys, recovered and reforged into his new limbs, gleamed faintly in the anemic light. He felt the dreadnought's vast consciousness, an ancient ocean of purpose and information coursing through him, a symbiosis blurring the lines between organic and machine, individual and collective. He was no longer merely Zaitan, but a conduit, a vessel, a voice for power predating their recorded history. Beside him, Machi's face, etched with a weariness transcending mere time, observed the unfolding spectacle. Her traditional robes, once pristine, now frayed and stained with the dust of battle and the grime of negotiations, embodied the grounded pragmatism that had shielded their faction from despair. The truce with the Sangheli remained fragile, balanced precariously on mutual fear and the dreadnought's undeniable authority. The Unity Plateau, once a contested no-man's land between Shyuum's strongholds, now pulsed with ceaseless activity. Forerunner constructs, no longer dormant relics, but active tools commanded by the dreadnought, buzzed overhead. These were not the crude instruments of civil war, but elegant, precise machines reshaping the scarred earth with an almost artistic grace. They lifted colossal segments of fallen architecture, mended gaping fissures in the planet's crust, and initiated atmospheric scrubbers that promised cleaner air. The very air now tasted different, less acrid, less metallic. Michael, a whirlwind of directives and data amongst engineers and architects, radiated an almost childlike wonder. The dreadnought's databanks had unveiled a universe of knowledge, and Michael, like a famished scholar, devoured every bite. He orchestrated the planetary repair, guided by the dreadnought's intricate understanding of ecological restoration and material science. His voice, amplified by a discreet Forerunner comm device, carried across the plateau a torrent of scientific jargon and ancient terminology. Precise calibration with the ionosphere is crucial for the atmospheric filters, accounting for residual particulate matter. He called to a team of Shyuum technicians who relayed the commands to a hovering construct. We're registering a 0.03% increase in oxygen saturation over the southern hemisphere. The Sangheli, for their part, maintained a dignified distance. Field Master Artas Vadumi, his armor gleaming, stood with Arbiter Repa, Morami, and a contingent of honor guard. They observed the Shyuum's frantic, organized activity with stoic intensity. The sheer scale of the dreadnought's reconstructive capabilities proved humbling. Their warriors, once poised for battle, now patrolled the Unity Plateau's perimeter, plasma rifles slung across their backs, a silent acknowledgement of the new, uneasy peace. Repa Morami approached Zayton and Mahi. His resonant growl cut through the machinery's hum. The progress is swift. Your ancient understanding is potent, prophet. The title, prophet, still felt alien to Zayton, a vestige of a discarded past. Yet, the dreadnought's presence, the gravitas of its purpose, had solidified a new kind of authority. It is not mine alone, Arbiter, Zayton replied, his voice a low thrum, amplified by his integration. It is the understanding of those who came before, a legacy we are now entrusted to wield. He gestured skyward, where a fleet of newly constructed, sleek, silent Forerunner drones began deploying a lattice of orbital defense platforms. The Flood does not respect old grudges or petty squabbles. It respects only strength and unity. Mahi stepped forward, her gaze piercing. The Alliance remains nascent, Arbiter. We build a foundation, not a finished structure. Our people's traditions, the lingering resentments of war, do not simply vanish with a treaty. Repa Morami nodded slowly. Indeed, my own warriors chafe under this new command. Some whisper of sorcery, of machines twisting the minds of your prophets. They remember the long war, the spilled blood. His eyes flickered to Zaytan's augmented form. You have changed, prophet, more than just flesh and metal. Necessity dictates evolution, Zaytan responded, his metallic fingers flexing unconsciously. He felt the dreadnought's deep resonance with Ripa's words, an echo of countless past conflicts, countless desperate alliances forged in the crucible of galactic threat. The Flood will strip us of all that we are, all that we hold dear, if we cling to the past. The ancient understanding reveals this truth with chilling clarity. Michael, sensing the shift in conversation, joined them, holding a data slate glowing with complex schematics. The dreadnought's projections are bleak without a unified response. The Flood's propagation vectors, its biomass assimilation rate, its adaptability. It is unlike any biological entity known to science. Our civil war, in hindsight, was a child's squabble over dust motes. He pointed to a holographic projection blooming from his data slate, a swirling, chaotic mass of organic matter, tendrils reaching out, engulfing planets, stripping them bare. It was a horror Mikkel had only recently comprehended, fundamentally reshaping his scientific worldview. The dreadnought guides the construction of new starships based on Forerunner designs, but adapted for our current technological base. Mikkel continued, eager to shift the focus to constructive action. These vessels will be faster, more heavily armored, and equipped with energy projection systems far beyond anything our combined fleets could produce. The first prototypes are already in fabrication within the dreadnought's internal foundries. Ratas Vadumi, silent until now, spoke, his voice measured. The warriors will fight, they always have, but they need to see the enemy. They need to understand the true nature of this threat beyond the words of prophets and machines. They will, Zishaitan promised, his voice resonating with an unshakable conviction born of the dreadnought's cold, hard data. The dreadnought has identified a world just outside our charted space, where the flood has made its initial incursions. A scouting mission will be necessary, not for engagement, but for observation, to truly comprehend the horror we face. Mohi looked at Zaitan, then at the distant horizon where the sky was slowly, almost imperceptibly, beginning to clear. And then we fight together. It wasn't a question, but a statement of grim resolve. The weight of leadership, of a species' survival, pressed down on her, yet a flicker of something new ignited. Hope. A desperate, fragile hope, born from the peril and promise of ancient technology. Within the dreadnought's vast internal bays, Shyuum engineers and Sangheli warriors worked side by side, a stark visual representation of this fragile alliance. Gloved Shyuum technicians meticulously calibrated energy conduits, while unmatched Sangheli laborers maneuvered massive structural components. The language barrier dissolved through universal symbols, shared urgency, and the dreadnought's constant, subtle guidance. Outside, the reconstructed planetary defense grid glowed, a network of energy, shielding, and weapon platforms pulsing with latent power. Janjur Qom, once a battlefield, slowly transformed into a fortress. It was a new dawn, not one of peace and prosperity, but of grim, unified purpose. The Covenant, a name whispered with a mixture of fear and conviction, was no longer just a concept. It was a reality, forged in the fires of necessity, powered by ancient understanding, and standing as the galaxy's last desperate hope. The shadows of the past still lingered, but the light of a common enemy and the potential of a unified future had begun to break through.